Taking a closer look at the documents in the startup phase of construction, there are several that we've already looked at on which we won't spend a whole lot of time. The indemnity agreement, of course, is between the contractor and surety. And then a bond application would be something that a contractor produces on a project basis. Taking a look at the qualification statement in a little more detail, there's actually several ways that a contractor can qualify to pursue a project. And if we look at that as a scale, on one end would be a very objective qualification using some type of consistent form that all contractors interested in bidding would produce. The other end of the scale is subjective, and this would be more like using marketing information to suggest being qualified. Here's the first page of one example of a contractor's qualification statement. This particular form is an AIA A305 and is actually several pages long. As you can see from the first page, these statements are very much on the objective clinical end of the scale, requesting information from a contractor. And they are a general contractor or a specialty contractor and so forth. Again, this document would be several pages long and would ask for all sorts of corporate and financial data that a contractor would provide to demonstrate his ability to perform. We've actually looked at the bid bond before, so we'll just look at this briefly. This is a sample of an AIA version of a bid bond document. Again, a very straightforward document. It includes a bond amount, and in this case, it's not fixed. Instead, it's a percentage of the bid proposal amount. And then these have been properly executed and witnessed, it appears, by the bonding agent. And accompanying that document, of course, we would need a power of attorney that lets us know that this person has the authority to bind the surety. The proposal is a document that we haven't looked at, so let's take a look at it in a little more detail. In this sample proposal form, as you can see, this is for a project on a public university campus. Most proposal documents are pretty intuitive. The legal name of the bidder or the person proposing the work, and then the project, and so forth. Drawings and specifications, name of the design firm, and the date on those drawings, all very important. The type of business entity that the contractor or subcontractor is, and so forth. Again, filling out most of this information is pretty intuitive. Very important on a proposal document is to acknowledge any addenda that have been issued, in this case 1 and 2, and the bidder acknowledges both of those. This is a lump sum competitive bid, so here's a place for a base bid, and as you can see, the contractor has proposed a lump sum price. Many times project proposals include alternates, so in this case they've listed those here, and it appears from this particular sample that alternate 4 is the only one that is proposed with a cost. On the next page, there's a section for unit prices, which is common. It would appear from this example that there are several, so there's an attachment that includes those. And this project is required to be bonded, and so we would expect to find a bid bond attached to it. This particular bid bond specification is for a fixed amount as opposed to a percentage amount. The state of Alabama requires general contractors to be licensed, so this is confirmed here. And then, of course, most critical is that the document has been executed by someone who has the authority to bind that particular general contractor. So that's the proposal. Now let's move on to the letter of intent. Keep in mind that the letter of intent is not something that's issued for every project, but could be issued if need be. Let's take a closer look. As you can see, a letter of intent is just that, and is typically issued on stationery as opposed to a form. If this were a letter of intent to a general contractor, then this might be issued on either the architect or the owner's letterhead. This example is the letter issued from a general contractor to a specialty contractor, recapping pricing or proposal information and confirming the GC's intent to issue a subcontract at a later date. This one also authorizes that subcontractor to proceed with the submittal process. Now let's take a look at the notice to proceed. Here's a sample of a notice to proceed from an owner to a general contractor. Let's take a closer look. Similar to the letter of intent, it's issued on letterhead, in this case from a public university issued to a general contractor. This basically establishes a formal notice to proceed with the construction of the project. So this is a more formal correspondence, where in this case, the owner is instructing the contractor to begin construction. Based on the language in the letter, it's hard to know if this was issued before or after the contract, but keep in mind that it could be issued either way based on timing needs. In addition to the formal notice, This confirms information like contract time, contact information, and so forth. And they're also asking for an acknowledgement here. This is key because the notice to proceed is actually what starts the contract clock. So as these 690 days are measured, this establishes on which date the contract time actually begins. Now let's take a look at a building permit sample. Usually building permits are pretty simple documents, but behind the scenes, this contractor had to make an application and have the plans reviewed. The actual building permit itself is a document that would typically be posted at the job site. This is a public record that the project has a legitimate building permit and has a number that's been issued, and this reference is what coordinates the inspection process over the life of the project. What we don't infer from the permit is that there is typically a significant fee that's been paid, and that would be part of the constructor's estimate. And largely, that's for the city or county to recoup the cost of the review of the plans and also the cost of the inspections. Now let's take a look at an actual contract or agreement. There are several different types of contracts related to the different types of project delivery, and they're quite numerous, so I won't go into those in detail here. But here's a sample of an agreement between owner and contractor where the basis of payment is a stipulated sum. Sometimes you'll hear this called a lump sum contract. Let's take a look at this in more detail. This is a pretty straightforward document relative to payment because there is no reimbursement language as there is with a cost plus contract. The contractor is going to get paid the same amount regardless of what his cost is. So here we see an agreement date, the owner, contractor, architect, and then the name of the project. This is a fairly simple contract document, and I won't go into a lot of detail in this section. Here, the drawings and the specifications are enumerated on an exhibit, which is common. The date of commencement is established here, which is relative to the number of calendar days by which the work should be complete. Establishing the lump sum contract is very straightforward. This fills out with a single amount of funds that the contractor is to receive based on completion of the work. And then several items down through here regarding payment and insurance. But most important, of course, is the execution. We can see here the contractor has executed the document and is waiting on a signature by the owner. Now let's take a look at the payment and performance bonds. We've seen these in another section, but just as one last look, I'll put these side by side just as a reminder that these documents are fairly simple, yet important. They will list a principal, which in this case is the general contractor, and the surety, who is underwriting the owner, and in this case is a public institution. Again, the penal sum on payment and performance bonds is typically the amount of the full contract value, quantifying the amount of risk that the surety is taking on behalf of the contractor. For both of these documents, power of attorney would typically be required because the agent would execute them on behalf of the surety.